Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Now, before we even start this episode, I have one question for you. Have you subscribed to the podcast? Have you heard about it? Well, I'm going to keep telling you about it. It's Section 420, Talkin Yankees. So wherever you get your podcasts, we're all over the place. Look for Section 420, Talkin Yankees, the podcast. Now, you're going to get additional content throughout the week, more than what you see here, whether you're watching it on YouTube or perhaps watching on television. You'll get some more rants from me, some more takes, for more opinions, and some more updates throughout the week. So again, you want to, wherever you get your podcast, look for Section 420, Talkin Yankees, the podcast, subscribe to it, and get additional content during the week. And what we're doing in this particular episode, we're kind of simulcasting. So if you do that, you'll actually get an earlier audio version of this episode before it even airs on television. So you kind of get a little bonus there. So again, make sure wherever you get your podcast, go to Section 420, Talkin Yankees, and subscribe. Now, this episode, we're going to look at the team now. 10 games in, 5-5 record. Not terrible, but we expect a little better than this. So we're going to kind of analyze the team at this point to see what the bright spots are, what the blemishes are, and just try to understand what this team could do to sort of get over that 500 mark. Because again, we've been expecting more than a 500 team. So in short, why is this team not off to the start we're expecting? It's clearly the hitting, which has just been terrible out of the gate. I mean, the pitching's been fine, the starting rotation's been fine, bullpen been fine overall, but the Yankee bats just haven't got going, which shouldn't be shocking. It happens a lot of times, down the spring, even though we had a couple of warm days in New York early on. So the pitchers are always ahead of the hitters, so it shouldn't be a shock that, the hitting has been the reason why the Yankees have been struggling. And just look at some of the Yankees, this way they rank against the entire league. I mean, they're like 17th in batting average, 26th in runs, 26th bottom of the barrel in RBIs. And only 17 in walks. So again, this offense as a whole is just not clicking. They're not they're not scoring enough runs. And a couple of the Yankees are really struggling bad. It's mainly Joey Gallo as well as Gleyber Torres, both under 200. Again, 10 games in, Donaldson just at the 200 line himself. So there's 3 players there, 200 and under. And great. Judge finally did get his first home run in that Toronto series, but that's really been it from him, and he really hasn't been anything special. Now, early on, it seemed like Rizzo and Giancarlo Stanton were kind of carrying the load a little bit, but even they've kind of cooled off since the opening Boston series. So just overall, it's been mainly on the offense, which has been the problem. So, I think over long term, we'll get a little better. I think Judge will start finally hitting a little bit. Again, Stanton came out pretty red hot and it kind of cooled down a little bit, but I think he'll be better. So, again, I don't think it's anything to fret over. And again, 10 games in, the Yankees were only 1 game back from the Toronto Blue Jays. So it's not like, they got off to like a start like the Dodgers, who started off like 8-2, or the Mets started off 7-3. Toronto's only been 1 game better. So really, at this point, kind of all the teams are stacked up evenly in the AL East. So again, not a reason for panic, but people are just upset because, again, this is kind of mirroring. And I kind of mentioned this in one of my Easter podcast upload, that it's just starting to look a little bit like last season, where the pitching's good, but this you have all these great players, but they're just not scoring enough runs. But I just won't go there yet. Just number one, it's too early in the season to even get into that. And again, some of these players are going to get a little better now. Someone like Gallo, even if he's batting 150 now. We know at best he's probably a 200, 210, 220 type hitter, so he'll get a little bit better, not significantly better, but he's going to be better than 150, that. Now, Gleyber is someone maybe you have to worry about a little bit because, again, the past 2 seasons he's been struggling. Again, defensively he's been okay overall, so that's good to move to second base, which, his previous couple of seasons, that's shortstop and been a little hairy in it, and they kind of figured maybe translate his problems into the field at the plate. So maybe I'll be a little bit more worried about Gallo. But I think Gallo's fine just because he is more of a veteran player, has a little bit more of a track record, so I'd be more secure with him. But I would say this, take it this way, really. The good news is that what's most importantly is the pitching, and for the New York Yankees, the starting rotation has been pretty good. The only really blemish, again, funny enough, has been Gerrit Cole's first 2 starts. Again, the opening one in Boston, where he got touched up a little bit in the first inning, and blaming Billy Crystal on that one. And then the second game against Toronto, again, wasn't terrible, but gave up a couple home runs to Vladdy Guerrero Jr. and did get touched up a little later for a double. Again, he wasn't god awful, but it wasn't like a vintage type of Cole dominating performance. But on the flip side of that, Luis Severino has been off to a great start of the season, and I'll take that as more important because I think Cole, again, he's been fine. He's the ace. He's usually for the most part healthy, for this season, Severino, this was going to be a big question mark because, this is going to be basically his first time back since 2019 being a full-time starter. We're just not sure, was he going to hold up and, still have a whole season to go. But if you look at his first 2 starts, if that's any indication how the season to go for him, then he's probably looking forward to a great season. And now if you can match Sevy and Cole 1-2, that's kind of what the Yankees are looking for, and then I think the Yankees will be in good shape. So if the offense gets it going a little bit and the starting rotation does what they do, in the long term it will be okay. And some of the other starters, we had some questions with. Again, Taillon coming back from a surgery procedure himself, and he's been all right. Nestor Cortes has been absolutely fabulous. Again, had an amazing Easter Sunday game in Baltimore. Just unfortunately, the Yankees couldn't score any runs for him, but 12 strikeouts in 5 innings, and plus he had that immaculate inning. So, and 2 good starts in a row. And, there was a lot of question marks about Nestor Cortes because he, kind of came out of his shell last season. Again, he was kind of a reliever. Then they kind of used him as a spot starter. Then he would start a little bit. Then he would relieve. And then he kind of became a starter the rest of the season. It was like, well, maybe it's a fluke. It's a one-time thing, But first 2 starts were fabulous. So, if he's the real deal, then, and you've thrown Montgomery as well in there, who in his first 2 starts, again, he pitched well enough in the first 2 games at least deserve a win. He didn't get the wins, especially that Baltimore game. The Yankees only scored 1 run for him. But again, he pitched well enough to be a winner in both the Boston and the Baltimore Oriole games. So, all 5 starters, if Cole's the only problem, then you really have no problem. Because I think overall Cole will get a little better. It's just, whatever, the first 2 starts weren't vintage Cole. But so the starting rotation does look pretty good. And you want to switch to the bullpen now. They all pretty well look good, except because now Chapman had a little flub a little bit. Getting in that Toronto game, came on, walked the bases loaded, but then, as I mentioned in one of the podcast episodes, uploads, that what I liked about the game is that Boone yanked them right out, didn't even get a chance to blow the game, so the Yankees did end up winning the game 3-0. Didn't really hurt the Yankees, but, it's just troubling because seeing this early from Chapman, just, struggling a little bit, because then they brought him back the next night in Baltimore. Came in against Cedric Mullins with the bases loaded. Did get a strikeout of him, so he did his job there. But the next batter ended up walking in the winning run on a 3-2 pitch. Now, the pitch was kind of borderline. I thought it was a little high and outside, so, I didn't have a problem with the umpire's call. I know Boone went nuts after that. But again, it was a situation where Chapman didn't really come through in a certain way. So now, the only really question mark with the bullpen, at least at this point, is like, all right, which Chapman we're getting. Now, last season, Chapman got off to a really great start, and then around June a little bit, July, he started to really hit the wall a bit and then had his usual issues, lost his job for a while, then he got it back at the end of the year, but really wasn't as strong as he started the season. So, Chapman initially to start out of the gate this season was really good, but then once that Toronto series came about, then we started to see him struggle with his control a little bit. So that's the only thing you have to worry about a little bit. And, there is always Jonathan Loaizaga, who, again, the Yankees relied on him a little bit last season to close, if need be. And, of course, the addition from last year, Clay Holmes, he's kind of ice in his vein as well. So if they need him to sort of step into that close role, I think, he could do it as well. But overall, I think the Yankee bullpen is okay. Rotation is okay. They just need to work on the offense. And after dropping 2 out of 3 to the Baltimore Orioles down in Camden Yards, a lot of fans were upset with Brian Cashman, kind of say, well, this is your team, and this was your team design, and they're laying eggs up there in terms of the offense. Well, if you want to examine the whole situation, yes, there are some. One of the main problems with the offense is they don't have a true, what you call, leadoff hitter, kind of speedster type or a contact, 300 hitter at the top that normally gets on base and could steal bases or go first or third on a single, stuff like that. Not that I don't know if that would make any big of a difference, but the Yankees do have to kind of rotate, which you would say, more power hitters in the leadoff spot, which is kind of unusual. Sometimes he puts Rizzo in there. So you might see Donaldson is in there. But it seems like, this Boone lately making statements that probably for most of the season we're going to see Aaron Hicks there in that leadoff role. And actually good news with Hicks, he went through winter ball to rehab a little bit, and at least the start of the season has been probably one of the Yankees' best hitters, hitting a little over 300. But again, you don't really see him as your typical leadoff hitter, just because he's more of a number 3 or, maybe a number 4 or 5 hitter, a power hitter. So to have him batting leading off a little bit makes it a little obscure, the lineup, and possibly this, the lineup that has a bunch of lumbering players from 1 to 9, where you kind of want a speedster, then you want a contact hitter, and then you sort of get to the 3, 4, 5 power hitters to get you in. So it's not exactly how the Yankees lineup is constructed. It's very power up top, and then once you get to the bottom, you have the IKFs of the world or the Higas of the world at the bottom. So it's kind of top heavy in that way. So that could be part of the reason, but I don't think there's really much Cashman could really do about that. Again, we knew Hicks was going to come back as the center fielder. We knew Gallo was the left fielder, and Aaron Judge was going to be the right fielder. That's your outfield, and there's really no way to get like a Spiezza type center fielder to put in there, like a Kenny Lofton type. It's just that player wasn't out there because we already had Aaron Hicks slated in center field. So I don't know if there's much Cashman could have done it unless he just pulled off some crazy, insane trade and gave away a bunch of prospects. But I just don't know the cost benefit of that, of having maybe a more traditional type of lineup versus getting rid of a Volpe or something like that. So again, I was overall with Cashman's move in this offseason, I was okay with it. And again, yes, it would be nice to have a more idealistic type of leadoff hitter and a more idealistic type of lineup. But again, I just think it's just more of a case that it's a little early this season. A couple of the players need to get the bats going a little bit, and then you'll see some more runs and people won't get as antsy. And for the Yankees themselves, I mean, they do need to figure out the Baltimore Orioles because last season, again, Baltimore was a 100-loss team, but the Yankees struggled against them, and this season so far they'll drop 2 out of 3. I mean, those should be easy wins that you should almost guarantee yourself, again, if they want any hopes of winning the AL East crown. So already 3 games down. Now Baltimore comes to Yankee Stadium towards the end of April, and then they have another 7 games against Baltimore going into May. So you're going to have like 10 games up front total, which is crazy. Against the Baltimore Orioles, most of the games already. So the Yankees really need to figure out Baltimore fast because there's a lot of easy wins there, and you want to take those off the board. And those are the games you're not supposed to struggle against. And I'll try to put away some of the negative Nellies. And let's look at the bright spots of some of this team. There are some good things to be happy about. I did mention that, again, the starting rotation does look good. And again, it's good to see Severino kind of being back to the Sevy that we remembered from a couple of seasons ago, and just hopefully keeps that up. But an important cog in the Yankee wheel to see was going to be the DJ LeMahieu, kind of which DJ LeMahieu we're going to get, the one from 2021 or the one who came here for the first 2 seasons and was like I guess the Yankees MVP. Well, it looks like DJ is back and looks fully healthy, and looks like a completely different player than we saw last year. Not only at the bat and driving the ball to right field, did get a home run during opening day, but just defensively as well. Yankees played him at third base a little bit, seen him a little bit at second base, but already this season made some fabulous plays at third base, which I was a little surprised about. I'd figure, maybe the Yankees would maybe spot him at first base and maybe a little second base. I didn't think they'd have him at third base initially, just until he got his legs under him. But on some off days for Donaldson, they've put DJ there, and DJ's made some great plays. So the good news is that it looks like the old DJ LeMahieu is back, and he needed to be back just because if this Yankee team had any hopes of getting anywhere, they needed their real DJ LeMahieu. And I think, again, going back to last season, why they had the offensive struggle last season was because they didn't really have DJ. There wasn't the real DJ. So that's why I'm a little more confident in the offense this season, because DJ is back. And you have to hope Anthony Rizzo never forgets to have his cup on, because, I mean, is there any other player you see get hit more than him? Ready with 4 hits by pitches this season. Again, we know he towers over the plate, and again, that's probably why he gets those a lot of near home runs that go just a little bit foul, but he stands right over the plate, and he's already been hit 4 times this season, which is crazy. So for Rizzo, I don't know, maybe he's used to the punishment already, but this guy's already got some big bruises on him. And not only is it early in the season for the Yankee players, but it's early in the season for some of the Yankees that the Yankees parted with in the offseason. So now, for all the people maybe that criticize that, the Yankees couldn't handle Clint Frazier the right way, they couldn't develop him, and obviously the Yankees eventually released him and he went to the Cubs. Well, let's do a little quick check on our friend Mr. Frazier, how he's doing. Well, currently he's batting about 154 with 0 home runs. So I don't know, maybe this is something with this guy. And again, everyone figured, well, he's going to go to the Cubs and be great and show up the Yankees, or the Yankees couldn't handle their prospects. Well, again, so far, at least to start the season, got really nothing out of Frazier. And, of course, the big trade that brought Donaldson here and shipped out Gary Sanchez as well as Gio. Well, if you want to check out them, Gary is doing what Gary does, batting about 207 with 1 home run. That's great. Now, Gio's doing a little better, has a home run himself, and is batting a little under 300. So doing a little bit there, but you don't get to the point where like those players went to other teams and went totally gangbusters. So now Donaldson has been great for the Yankees, and man, he's hitting a little bit about 200. Did finally get his first home run in that series against the Baltimore Orioles, and been driving the ball a little bit to right field. So again, it's been a little slow at the bat. Again, he's 36 years old, and maybe just takes him a little while to get it longer. Again, I think he'll be okay overall, but so far, you can't really judge whether the Gio, Gary versus Donaldson, who got the better of that right now. I think it's still up in the air, but at least at the point, you can't say that the Yankees kind of made any big errors in any of those transactions. I like to keep my promises, and I've mentioned before, I'm going to promise and keep reminding you that you should download the podcast, Section 420 Talkin Yankees, the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, for additional content throughout the week and kind of an early sneak preview of some of these episodes that you air before on television. So again, wherever you go to get your podcasts, your favorite podcast place, just type in, we're all over the place, Section 420, Talkin Yankees, pops up, subscribe throughout the week for additional content. Now back to the Yankees. Now when the Yankees rolled out their opening day roster, one of the players that were kind of surprised to make the team was J.P. Sears, lefty, that kind of came out of nowhere, but again he pitched well during spring training and made the opening day roster and eventually pitched in that Saturday game in Camden Yards and pitched quite well in his debut. Now his reward for that, he got sent down, which the Yankees always do that stuff. They kind of send pitches up and down, whoever have the options to do so. Bringing up Tim Locastro, who you may recall the Yankees traded for with the Diamondbacks last season. And was only here for a very small handful of games. Again, he wasn't really brought here for the bat, but mainly brought here for his defense. He's kind of a defensive specialist. But unfortunately, last season in left field, Yankee Stadium, bangs his knee against the wall and ended up tearing his MCL, and he was done for the year. Now, Boston briefly picked him up and then dropped him, and then I guess the Yankees scooped him up in free agency, and so he made his debut with the Yankees on the Sunday Easter game and made an excellent diving play, just to save possibly a run from Chad Green. So, I was kind of questioning why even bring this guy back. You're not sure about the knee, but it looks like the knee is healthy because he made that full stretch. And again, it would be a game the Yankees ultimately lost. But had the Yankees won that game, you would have looked back at Tim Locastro and said, hey, you know what? Possibly this guy saved the game. Now, what we wanted from the New York Yankees this season was a little bit small ball, and we got that in the finale of the Toronto series, mainly by IKF kind of Falefa. I mean, in that game, he kind of had his little breakout because he didn't really have the greatest start to the season, at least with the bat. But it was in that finale of the Toronto series that he did a couple of things I liked. Of course, going 3 for 3 is nice, as well as getting on base again, reaching on an error. But he did something crazy for a Yankee. He actually laid down a bunt, and he actually ended up getting on base for it. And not only did he lay down a bunt successfully, but Jose Trevino afterwards also attempted a bunt. Now, he was unsuccessful in doing so, but to get idea back-to-back bunt attempts for the New York Yankees. Again, I kind of mentioned it in the podcast. It was probably it had to be the first time in a billion years because this team just did not bunt, does not do it well successfully. So it's just good in this lineup if we could have some players that we can rely on to lay down a bunt because really for the past 5, 6, maybe more than that, it's been really a disaster to get anyone really lay down a bunt. The only one who was able to do it a little bit for the Yankees last season was Tyler Wade, but of course he's no longer with the team. So it's good that we can have players we can rely on to lay down a bunt. And Kyle Higashioka is a reason why you kind of have to take spring training with a little bit grain of salt. Again, he was like the home run champion in spring training, drilled 5, 6 home runs in spring training. So, let's see how's that translating to the regular season. Well, 10 games in, he's barely batting like $120 and has no home runs. So that's why you shouldn't go too gaga when players do well in spring training because, again, it depends on, which they might be facing, like AA or single A pitches in some cases. Or pitches just might be working on stuff. There might be a situation where normally during the regular season they might throw a breaking ball, but just because they want to get a fastball over, just get the control, they might groove one in and he hits a home run. And again, the Yankees a couple of seasons ago when they originally had Greg Bird, he had another spring training like that where he hit 6 home runs, but then he started the season a little so-so, and that's one of the years he got injured and got shut down. So just in the future when you see a player just go bonkers in spring training, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have a good season because it all depends, which pitches they're facing as well as what those pitches, what their goal is. Even though they're on the mound, their goal may not to be strike a player out. Their goal might just to be work up the pitch count a little bit or just work on their fastball control and maybe just, Higa just lucked out to be in the right place and right position a couple times this spring. So, I like that they brought in Trevino. Again, he's not a major upgrade in terms of the offense. I mean, you want your catcher, again, first and foremost, to be good defensively, and I think both are, both very good framers. But I think at some point, though, as I mentioned even before the season started, I think there's still possibly a move to be there a catcher because, Trevino, he did hit a little bit in that Toronto finale, a double. He was kind of responsible for 2 of the runs there. But, again, you need a little bit more out of your catcher than to be hitting 200. So we'll see how it goes. But I think sometime at the trade deadline, I wouldn't be shocked, or even sometimes throughout the regular season, Cashman brings yet another catcher in here just to create a little more competition because you got to get a little bit more at hitting from that position. Now, in the previous televised episode, we kind of got into the whole Aaron Judge contract thing. And, well, initially during the first series, it's the first 3 games, so, you can't really expect a player to be, Babe Ruth like that. But you did start to hear a smattering boos going into the Toronto series because Judge really wasn't hitting it well. Now, Judge got his first home run of the season during that series. And again, the first 10 games in, only been batting about 250. But again, so early, you don't really want to condemn a player. But you did hear a little boo birds for Aaron Judge past maybe the first time, a little animosity there, just maybe rejecting the contract and not getting off to a really good start of the season. Again, just seeing the offense overall being a little anemic. And again, fans are very reactionary, but did see a little bit boo birds for him. Now, when he did hit the home run, again, the place went crazy. He got his standing ovation, the whole deal like that. But it's just going to be interesting as the season goes on. Just, if he does have a struggle for a week or two ago, how fans are going to go on him a little bit. And we've seen it in the past. Seen it with Derek Jeter again. I believe like 2003 or 2004. Got off to like a 121 start to the season, and even the great Yankee captain heard some boos. And then of course we know the boo birds came from Mariano Rivera again after the 2004 season. When they see he kind of blew games against the Boston Red Sox, kind of his fault, not really his fault. Opening day at Yankee Stadium 2005, got a little smattering of boos. So everyone gets booed at Yankee Stadium. I don't think Judge, he kind of laughed it off afterwards. But it was interesting to finally see the fans, going after the Golden Boy, so to speak, like that. And of course now you're hearing all the stuff that since the Judge contract now got done, with Steve Cohen across the river try to steal Judge from the Yankees. Now, in season past, you would probably say, no way, because, Judge, okay, yeah, he's playing the field now, but, there's no DH in the National League. Well, now it's different now, because starting the season and probably till now the rest of the time, there is now a DH in the National League. So if he did want to go to play for the National League team, well, he could be a right fielder, but he could also spend his time as DH, and as well as maybe the later part of that contract if he's just going to be a full-time DH at some point. Again, the Mets, Mets or any National League team can now offer that. So it does make it interesting. Would I think Judge would jump ship? I don't think he would go from the Yankees to the Mets to stay in New York. I mean, I think if he does jump ship, it would be somewhere else, maybe the Dodgers or maybe Texas, something like that. I just think for the whole thing, just to go from the Yankees to the Mets, cross town like that, I wouldn't see that happening unless Cohen just offered him something like out of this world, which, again, I don't see that happening. And we'll see how that goes. But ultimately, I think Judge would stay here. Now, I didn't think it would get this far, but it's going to be a little scary next offseason. But if anywhere him to go, I really can't see him playing for the Mets. As mentioned in the previous episode, one of the new caveats of this season was going to be the communication device between the pitcher and the catcher. Again, now the Yankee player or the Yankee pitches will have a little speaker in the hat, and now the catchers can press a button, signal what pitch they want versus throwing down the signs the traditional way. Overall it's been good because, again, overall Yankee pitching has been okay, but we have been seeing some bugs with it. Opening game against Boston, Miguel Castro had some issues with it supposedly. Now he got out of a big jam with a strikeout, but there was a communication issue. And in that Friday night game down in Camden Yards, Chapman was also having a little bit of issue as well. So, this is gonna have to keep an eye on it. At some point down the season, maybe it ends up costing the Yankee game. We don't know, and maybe it ultimately was the reason why Chapman maybe had a miscommunication on some of the pitches when he walked in the winning run. So we don't know yet, but it seems like the Yankees is fully bought into it, and maybe they feel is victimized from all these seasons from from against the Houston Astros or what happened with the Boston Red Sox. So maybe the Yankees just want to go full no sign. Now some teams are still doing the sign, some are not, but the Yankees seem to be fully on board with this new technology. And the device was not only supposed to help prevent sign stealing, but it was also to speed up the game as well, because a lot of times they're throwing out signals and the pitcher steps off the mound and the pitcher comes back on and they throw a signal, stuff like that. So now down in the minors, as we mentioned way before back, that they're implementing some new rules for the minors that they're going to experiment down there, and then part of the new CBA agreement will be up here in the majors, and one of them is going to be a pitch clock. Now again, very small sample size, but so far down in the minors, using the pitch clock has shaved off on average 20 minutes time from these games. So it's going to be interesting to shorten the game, and that's kind of been baseball's goal for the past couple of seasons, again, because they kind of figure that fans are kind of tune out a little bit, and the game's too long and too slow, too long between any sort of action. So again, the use of the catcher-pitcher little communication system, as well as maybe a pitch clock in the future, we should also cut that down as well, and just again get more action on the field, less lag time where kind of fans may want to change the channel, look at their phone a little bit in the stands, and kind of lose interest a little bit. So it seems that we're working, and seems the players are into it. So far, so good. Now, interesting enough, again, without really the pitch clock. But even with the use of the pitcher catcher technology, opening day for Yankee Red Sox game was kind of a traditional Yankee Red Sox game. Went about 4 hours. If you remember back in the day, really during the early 2000s, I mean those games used to go 5 hours. So it hasn't been that bad lately with the Yankees Red Sox, but opening day was 4 hours. So still a lot of work to be done. So bringing this episode to a close, let's see what the Yankees could do to be a little bit better for the next stretch of games. Again, 5-5 is not really the start we wanted. Not really terrible, because remember, the past couple of Aprils, they've actually been a below 500 team and kind of struggle a little bit. So, I don't think we're at that panic mode yet, or even being near that panic mode. But the Yankees could be a little bit more consistent. And one way is kind of maybe have a different method of putting a lineup there versus this rest roulette they have going there. And you have players like Donaldson, a little bit old, and DJ LeMahieu coming back from an injury a little bit like that. So what the Yankees have been doing is kind of been doing like a windmill of just giving one of those players a day off. And what it does really overall is that you don't have a consistent lineup. And again, I mentioned a couple times they kind of switched up the leadoff hitter a little bit. Again, we saw a little Donaldson there opening day. We saw a little bit of Rizzo there at the time. We saw a little Aaron Hicks there over a long period of time. I think it will be Aaron Hicks by default. But the Yankees are going to have to figure out just get a more consistent line, just so baseball players are all creatures of habit, and just for the most part like to know when they're playing, where they're in the batting order, and they thrive like that. When you kind of have different lineups every day, it's just kind of tough on the players to kind of get into a groove. So that's something to look at if they're going to keep that method going forward. I think they might going to lean towards it just because they probably just want to keep someone like Donaldson, who's again he's 36 years old, healthy, and just give him some off days when necessary. And already the Yankees haven't been shy about Giancarlo Stanton playing some outfield, as well as so we even saw a little Judge in center field. So the Yankees are being a little flexible with that. That's good in that regard, but they have to get a little bit more consistent with the lineup. And it's going to be interesting with Gleyber Torres at second base, because clearly DJ is doing better than him, at least offensively. Now again, they probably don't want DJ playing a little too much, because again he is coming back from an injury 2021, even though he played through a lot of the injuries. But I'm sure they want to give him his rest as well. But if Gleyber does continue to struggle like that, at some point you might see a situation then where maybe DJ just becomes the everyday second baseman overall, and Gleyber is going to have to fight for his job back. And in that case, then you'll have a more consistent lineup where you'll just see Donaldson always at third and DJ always at second base, which at this point looks like that's going to happen unless Gleyber could turn this around. I would like to see Gleyber turn this around. I'd rather have the problem of too many good players and not sure where to play him, because I just think that makes a better team overall. And Gleyber does have some stuff to offer, so it'd be a shame that he's kind of just fades out and has to get traded away like a Gary Sanchez. So, I think overall the offense will be better. I think Judge will start hitting, and then overall, and then finally Gallo will start hitting as well. Well, don't worry, there's a ton of baseball left, which means there's a lot more for me to say. And the only way you can hear all of it is by subscribing to that podcast. Again, Section 420, Talkin Yankees, the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcasts, go there, look for it. Section 420, Talkin Yankees.